Hey there, everybody. Today, we are joined by Ashton Wilson, founder and CEO at Active Solutions AI, an advanced AI solutions firm delivering business transformations and specializing in conversational AI and CRM solutions. Active Solutions AI has so far generated more than 12,000 leads and 6,000 appointments with a 56% booking success rate, which is a vast improvement over standard booking success rates, using over 30 AI-powered features and workflows. Welcome, Ashton.
Thank you for having me, man. I'm super excited for this.
Same. So tell us, what's the story behind Active Solutions?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. I could give you, actually, I'll go ahead and give you the long answer.
Go for it.
So before I got in to business at all, I was actually working in a hospital. I was a cardiac physiologist, and I decided to start a business while I was working at the hospital just because I didn't necessarily like what I was doing at the time. So I was kind of going about my day to day, and I didn't like that I was kind of like capped and everything was super tenured, and I wanted to get more out of the actual work that I was doing. So I started my first business, which was called Gym Closers. It was a marketing agency for gyms. And I had a lot of experience in the gym space prior to that. Just due to my degree, I had a master's degree in exercise physiology, worked at a couple of gyms, ran an Anytime Fitness myself as well. Yep. So I was like, okay, this makes the most sense. So that was the niche I picked. I started that, and I was, in a short period of time, able to kind of match my income at the hospital, and I just kind of quit everything cold turkey. I went all in on business. It was not easy. It took me about 13 months to really get my head above water, because I invested a lot of my, personal loans, credit card debt, et cetera, to get everything up and running on ad spend to try to make things happen. After about 12 or I'd say 10 months, I was able to kind of break even and churn some profits. Mm-hmm. Then we hit this point where we were doing really well. We were consistently signing up clients. But one of the bottlenecks that we saw for gym owners was that they don't like to call their leads. They're running the gym. They're cleaning the toilets. They're the janitor of their own gym. They're like one-man shows, and they have and sometimes, a lot of the times, they're doing the training in the gym as well. So it's like now they have to do all of this lead nurturing, and that makes things significantly harder. In 2020, near the end of 2022 and beginning of 2023, I built a conversational AI when ChatGPT 3 first came out. So this was before anybody else was doing it.
Nice.
I watched a bunch of YouTube videos, and I was able to kind of create this integration directly from OpenAI into CRMs. And so that AI could communicate via SMS. So we connected this to our ad campaigns. And whenever leads were being generated, the AI would reach out and start a conversation with all the prospects and then get them to book an appointment onto somebody's calendar. Now, once this happened, and it took me like probably 2.5 months of just pure no sleep to figure this out. Mm-hmm. Once this happened, it was a game changer, and we started launching ads for it right away. We were getting like $1 leads when it started on Facebook. But the leads that were coming in weren't just gym owners. Even though we said conversational AI appointment setters for gym owners on the ad, people were coming through and they're like, hey, I'm not a gym owner. I'm actually, I'm a chiropractor, but this looks really cool. I would like to see if this would work for me too. And eventually we started signing up more people that weren't gym owners than that were. And Gym Closers, the branding didn't really make sense anymore. So we rebranded from Gym Closers to Active Solutions, and we became we started off as mainly honing in on conversational AI. We assign account managers and prompt engineers to people's accounts. We build these AI solutions into people's businesses that were running paid ads to kind of skyrocket their booking rates. Mm-hmm. That evolved into also just doing full CRM customization and optimization for businesses in general. Some people come in, they have sales teams, large sales teams, 10 people, 15 people, 20 people on a team, and their CRM's all over the place. Nobody has any daily flow. Like they're just calling leads that are assigned to them, and they don't really have a means of, or a process to really get leads to convert. So we come in, we build out all of the automations, the follow-up campaigns, the pipeline stage automations, and then we install the conversational AI to work alongside their human teams. And a lot of times you can get the same amount of work done with a third of the staff. So there was one company we worked with, they had probably between 15 to 20 salespeople, like appointment setters on the team. We came in, installed all of our systems and the conversational AI, and they were able to bring it down to about 7 appointment setters working with the AI and higher booking rates. That's where we are now. So that was kind of the process of where we started, how we evolved into Active Solutions, and now we're still just crushing doing the same thing.
Awesome. So it sounds like that was a big shift, and it sounds like it was a good type of shift, because sometimes business owners, they run into massive problems and they're like, okay, I need to just shift directions entirely. So I'm glad that it was positive. Now, in terms of like the types of companies or clients that you're working with right now, Like, what tends to be your best type of customer?
That's a great question. So funny enough, we work with a lot of online businesses in B2B. So a lot of our clients are marketing agencies or lending firms, small business lending, for example. We work with some brick and mortar locations like chiropractors, health clinics, stuff like that. But for the most part, online B2B typically tends to be our biggest client base.
Right, because they have high value clients, a lot of calls that they don't have the time to follow up with, and the follow up is everything, right?
1,000%. Yeah.
Right. So I think for those of you listening, follow-up rates, I think there's a statistic out there that says if you can follow up within about 5 minutes of them expressing interest, opting into any sort of information, booking a call with you, you 21x the chance of converting that client.
Yeah. So that's actually one of the stats that we give on our sales calls as well.
Right. So that's the power of having an always-on agent that is conversational, that does sound like a human and can answer questions.
100%.
So I guess let's dive into like the capacity of that AI agent or the conversational agents you put together. So let's say I was a B2B agency owner before this. If I had a B2B agency and I was looking at using a conversational agent, what kind of conversation is this AI agent programmed to have with these leads? How can I trust it to have a valuable, high quality conversation?
Yeah, that's a great question. One thing I think is important to preface as well. So we typically don't use voice AI. It's mainly conversational AI via text message, email, and Facebook and Instagram DMs. And then for our UK clients, it's WhatsApp communication as well. We're actually one of the first companies to introduce conversational AI and WhatsApp communication. But typically what happens, lead comes into the system, or maybe we're reactivating a cold list, whatever it might be. The AI will reach out, and we have a prompt engineer that will actually program an AI and the conversations that they have, or the types of conversations that they have via SMS. And we'll give it a history, we'll give it a background so it can refer to past experiences, like where it went to college, etc. It needs to have a bunch of knowledge in the business itself. And then it needs to follow a talking track, and it needs to have kind of small objectives throughout the way, and then one major objective. So an example would be of a small objective would be qualifying questions. So I might ask things like, what type of business do you own? How much funding are you looking for? How soon are you looking to get funded? What's your company revenue? And that would be like a business lending company as an example. Right. And then the primary objective would be either to fill out an application or to schedule an appointment onto somebody's calendar. And when you structure it in this way, the AI is able to be fully conversational, ask the right questions, and then get them to that final stage of either booking or filling out an application. And a lot of times you can program it to be very, very human-like, even make mistakes in conversation, spell words wrong, and then have it correct itself afterwards. Things like that increase response rates significantly.
Interesting. Okay, so you make it more human than the traditional like AI chatbot that we've been using for years now. Okay. So why not go into the actual live conversational agents?
You mean over the phone? Yeah, great question. So at the moment, we're keeping track of the numbers very closely, and we have a voice AI agent that we can deploy. However, the numbers aren't good at the moment. I think there's about a 98% hang-up rate for voice AI across multiple different industries. So even when someone picks up the phone, there's a 98% chance within the first 60 seconds that person's going to hang up the phone. So we don't want to implement it for our clients just yet because we think it'll actually be a detriment to the process.
Right.
I think humans are still needed for the type of rapport that needs to be built over the phone at the moment. But when the time comes that the technology is there, I mean, we're gonna go all in on it.
Got it. So that's actually really interesting because I've had other agency owners, AI agency owners on the podcast, and they're all in on just live conversations. Granted, they're calling 100,000 leads at the same time, and you can imagine that the conversion rates are a bit different there, right? So it's actually really interesting that you're looking at the data, this like kind of like data-driven approach towards deciding on the implementation strategy. That's critical because if not, you can actually burn leads. And although there are 8 billion people in the world, there's a limited amount of people, and your brand, your reputation is actually critical to protect, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think another thing on that as well is our business model. Most of our clients are people who have consistent inbound lead generation. So even large companies have somewhere between 500 and 1,500 leads that they generate on a monthly basis. So 98% of that, if you're making phone calls, right? Let's say 2% of people answering the phone, let's say 1% converts into a phone call or some type of meeting. those numbers don't really make sense. But if you're dialing out 100 to 200,000 people for a realtor or for solar companies, whatever it might be, 1% of those numbers, even if you can swing 0.5% of it to get people to book, does make sense, because now it's a volume game. It's no longer a quality game.
Right. And you're focused on quality right now, maximizing the current lead flow. Interesting. So it also sounds to me like by making it text-based and having these like micro objectives with a larger singular objective, making it human-like, you can also strategically enrich those CRM entries too, right? So you end up getting a lot more information about this prospect, meaning that maybe conversations later down in the sales pipeline, when you're actually like live with the sales rep with that client, are much higher quality. Is that like a wrong assumption?
No, that's a perfect assumption. So one of the differences between a normal like automation text message that goes out is that our AI is actually able to build rapport, especially if it seems like a human, the person's going to respond. We're also implementing this we're working on implementing into iMessage through CRM as well. So now you have blue messages with an AI communicating, which is going to go crazy whenever we crack the code on that. But so you get a certain point throughout the conversation, and our appointment setter will call, and then you can kind of confirm the information that was in that chat log as well. So you can say, I see you own this type of business, you've been in business for this many years, and you're looking for this much funding. And then you can continue the conversation. So it's like you're building rapport, you're giving your sales team more information. And I think it's kind of that nurturing is making the lead higher quality in a sense.
So it does make it higher quality. Great. So now let's take it into like the real world implementation of it, right? Because when you have these conversations, live conversations with these with people, prospects, potential clients, they show up or they don't show up. You help get people onto the call. But then thereafter, the follow-ups, do you help with that too?
Absolutely. So typically one of the things we set up in the CRM is like multiple different pipeline stages that have associated automations. So we can trigger AI when someone no-shows an appointment, for example. We can trigger an AI to follow up every single day or every other day. And then when the person responds, the AI will kick back into appointment booking mode and schedule that person back onto the calendar. Same way, if someone comes into the system and they don't reply the first time, it will be a never-ending follow-up system, or maybe for the next 30 days where it follows up every other day for a certain period of time.
Got it. Okay. How else are you kind of like building out these workflows? Because you have the sales pipeline automation, like the sales enablement downlocked, right? So then what else are you guys capable of? What else have you guys done?
What you mean in terms of just CRM solutions overall?
Yep. With AI workflows, the rest.
Yeah. So overall, like AI is obviously a very sexy term to slap on things. But at the end of the day, we're just trying to get people more sales. We're trying to increase conversion rates overall. So the conversational AI is one of the big pieces of the puzzle that kind of get people in the door. We also provide sales team training. So we train teams on how to utilize the systems that we build for them, because we kind of take a level of complexity and we try to make it simple for their team to be able to operate out of. And then we have, certain pipelines for each individual salesperson, AI campaigns or workflows that they can be enrolled into based on certain scenarios. And then we create dashboards that automatically track all of this information as well. So what their booking rates are, what their average response time is, what the average speed to lead is via phone call, so that we know if the appointment setters are doing their job and they're leveraging priority, stuff like that. So that's typically our goal.
Got it. So do you guys still recommend that business owners, B2B agencies, or otherwise they still hire SDRs?
It's going to depend on the size of the business, but I think a well-trained appointment setter is you can't beat it. Like if you a lot of people have had bad experiences because they maybe they hire someone overseas that doesn't have a lot of experience, or they hired someone that didn't undergo like the right type of training. But if you have a well-trained appointment setter, it will triple the amount of appointments that you get booked, especially if you have AI alongside that as well.
Fascinating. So I'm assuming that that's what you guys have internally too, like on in your sales pipeline.
100%. We practice what we preach. Every system that we build almost mimics ours. The only difference is that we customize it specifically to their business model.
Interesting. I wonder how much more you guys have or can customize it, because I know that at like larger, higher, like enterprise level sales, you do very custom, like case study lead magnet generation to close those businesses. I'm wondering if, because we're talking about transactional sales in a lot of ways, or more often than not. So high ticket transactional sales. So I'm wondering if this is actually an opportunity to bring that sort of like methodology down into this level of business. if that could actually end up increasing or improving overall pipeline value.
You mean for larger enterprise companies?
More so for the businesses that you're dealing with right now, not like purely enterprise, but taking the enterprise level methodologies like account-based sales, where you create those custom case studies, those custom lead magnets, and you start actually figuring out, okay, how does AI actually generate that for these leads right now? Because let's look at your business real quick. There are lending companies, there are gym companies. You have case studies for both, right?
Yeah.
So what if like you have case studies, you want to present the right case studies to the right businesses. So if you're talking to a lending company, you want to share lending company case studies and even lending company specific lead magnets, right?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, like, is that something that you guys do yet, or is that something like it's on the roadmap?
That's a great question. We actually could, I mean, you saying that gives me, I already have the plan in my head of how that exactly could be done. 100% program an AI to send appointment reminders based on the type of business that they've submitted on a form. And we could program it to have a log of like 20 different links for our testimonial videos or whatever it might be. And we could send the one specific to that industry. We don't do that now, but you gave us an idea. That's great. At the moment, we keep it more broad. We have a testimonial success stories page on our website, and we utilize that. And it has pretty much every case study and every testimonial on that page. But
Right. You guys are operating on like the volume case study play. Like, okay, here are all the testimonials across every industry because we're great at this thing that works at like for almost everybody.
Yep.
Which is massive value. And there's no reason to not do that, really. But I wonder, like, what happens when you do more custom approach? I mean, you already know, like, if you have a very one-on-one approach with somebody and you customize everything towards them, then there's so much more likely to have a conversation and end up like working with you, right?
Yeah. No, 100%. You nailed it. I think the more you can customize it, and obviously there's got to be a sweet spot, right? So, because you could customize every single email that you send to every single person, but automation is what makes you more efficient as well. So you need that middle ground of like, how much can we achieve the volume game as well as achieving the quality game? And quality in terms of would be customization to that person specifically or to that business specifically. So there's got to be a little bit of a middle ground, but that would be that's a really good idea. You could still have that customized approach and it could be 100% automated. Absolutely.
Interesting. So, I mean, there's still so much to unlock. I mean, you guys are right at the start of a massive wave. Like, this has to end up becoming the standard for all businesses. Yeah. It's going to, maybe you see it too, but like in a couple of years, it's going to be odd for a business to not have a 24/7 receptionist or not have automated pipelines that follow up like immediately. It'll almost be like bad business practice to not have these things set up.
Yeah.
So like
absolutely.
It's a new standard.
Yeah, I think it is right now as well. I talk to people every day, like on our sales calls, who they're still utilizing spreadsheets. I mean, these are companies that are doing more than 10 million a year. And it's like, they're using spreadsheets and Google Drive for everything. And I'm like, how are you guys surviving right now? That's insane. But it is going to be the standard. Even 5 years from now, I don't think there's going to be a lot of people that don't have these systems in place. And right now, I think is a time where you can jump in and beat out your competition for the next couple of years until everybody's using it.
Exactly. Because there's always the lag effect. The early adopters, after the systems have actually proven themselves out, which they have, right? That's essentially what you guys have proven so far. The people who actually see it and aren't, hindered by all of the resistance that there is against AI right now are the ones who are going to end up winning, maybe doubling, tripling their businesses.
Yeah.
As a result. So in terms of like AI transformations for businesses, I have to ask, like, there's the traditional coding approach, right? Where you can hard code everything. But then there's the AI driven solution approach, right? Where you can prompt everything. Now, I know that there are businesses out there who think that, okay, AI means coding, but maybe it doesn't. Or that automations mean coding, and maybe it doesn't. Or even that they are coding right now and they're wasting time and effort trying to code everything instead of doing it the smarter way. So I just wanted to ask, like, what do you see in terms of like how traditional coding is actually falling short of AI-driven solutions and prompting?
That's a great question. So I think there's a common misconception of like you said, like I think there's a crossover of coding and then leveraging automation or AI. Automation and AI is really like the coding's already been done. The hard part's been done for everybody. There's platforms out there that you can leverage that they've created something that make it easy for you to take what they've done on the back end and actually just piece together what automations, what types of AI you want to utilize. So for example, something like, are you familiar with Go High Level, the platform? Okay, so their automation section, one of the best automation sections you'll see in any CRM.
It does.
There is a back-end coding to that, to like building the entire software that they've already done. But in the automation section, it's like you're building a flowchart. You can put form submitted, send text message, and then draw a line, and it will follow up with the person if they don't respond. And all of that is just you clicking buttons. It's crazy how easy these platforms have made it for us to get started. So sometimes people have that fear of thinking that there's a crossover, coding and automation and AI, and that stops them from even trying to begin with, because they're like, oh, I don't have time to learn how to code. Well, coding's already been done. You really just have to piece the idea together and then actually spend a few minutes learning how to use the automation board.
Right. And if I think maybe it's even like a step beyond that, it turns into the like a bottleneck of understanding workflows, right? Of how to optimize and see the system and how it all pieces itself together. Not so much the requirement to code, but the requirement to understand your own systems and turn them into automations. So then I guess the follow-up question here is then what challenges are there in getting people to believe in this if it's just so kind of easy for them to do it themselves, but then also be so obvious based off of your guys' results that this actually works?
I think one of the biggest bottlenecks, and everybody's in a different phase in business, but I think one of the biggest bottlenecks is they either don't have the time or they don't have the money. And I think that those are the only two. And you have to spend one of those to kind of get one of these solutions implemented into your business to actually work. It's going to take time regardless. Any new system is going to take time to actually adapt to. But some people don't have the money genuinely, so they have to use their time, but they're afraid to get started. They're afraid they won't be able to do it effectively, so they actually never start. And it becomes this paralysis by analysis thing. And then some people don't have the time to get it finished, and they do have the money, but they don't have the awareness that it's what they need yet. So they just end up, not even looking for the solution. So they never end up in the right place to actually spend the money to get it done, if that makes sense. I think most people just feel safe with their current processes, and they're afraid of change as well.
There's people don't know what they don't know. And then they do know, but then they don't know the actual cost that they're incurring right now by not changing. And then in the process of finding the solution, it becomes potentially even costlier, I guess is a way to summarize that.
Yeah.
So the solutions are out there right now, and hopefully the people out there will realize that. So another question here is, okay, so we can say AI is really transforming and changing businesses around the world, with how they do their lead generation, their sales pipeline, how they manage their businesses, and so on. But where do you think it's actually falling short and not transforming businesses?
Where do I think AI is falling short and not transforming businesses? That's a great question. I think personally, there are many ways that you can leverage AI and automation to scale businesses, and we've done it many times, right? I think personally, in some cases, there are versions of AI that I personally don't think are ready, and people are trying to implement it, and it's actually being a detriment. So an example would be people using voice AI and trying to leverage it for inbound lead generation, kind of like the process that we have, but instead using voice AI. Right. There are people who are running these types of businesses for same type of businesses that we work with that have a lot of inbound lead generation. And the numbers just don't make sense. So they're selling these large ticket prices, and it's hurting people's businesses because they're on the opposite end of the spectrum, where they want to use AI for everything, even if it isn't ready yet for that sector of their business specifically. Some people want to use AI to replace anything. Some of the people I jump on calls with, they're like, I want to build this to a $10 million business, and I don't want one employee. And I'm like, do you know how hard that's going to be? That's almost ridiculous to think that at this time, maybe somewhere down the line. But I think people are jumping the gun on using AI solutions in parts of their business where it's not yet ready, and it's doing them a disservice rather than a service.
Because it ends up hurting the customer relationship, customer fulfillment.
Correct.
And potentially even ends up wasting their time and getting them to not believe in the actual core promise of the technology or the systems, and instead kind of making it into something that it potentially isn't just yet. Interesting.
That's why data is so important. I think it's you need to look at it's really going to be, it's hard to be the first adapter, right? It's not hard to be an early adopter, but it's hard to be the first one. So there's always going to be some type of data around what you want to use it for. look at the data first, look at what other people are using AI technology for, and then look inside of your business and see what you can piece together, which bottlenecks you have that have usually your biggest bottlenecks are the ones that have the most room for improvement. And those are the changes that you need to make to see the biggest business changes in my opinion. So for example, if we jump into a business and we see somebody has a 4% booking rate, we could 3x that easy. And 3xing the bookings means 3 times the amount of money they're making on the front end, 3 times the cash collected, because they're getting 3 times the amount of opportunities on the sales calls. But that's where you need to utilize AI. But you need to research, you need to look at the data, and then you need to implement it where the biggest bottlenecks are.
Right. So then how would you recommend that people actually walk through their business to identify their bottlenecks? And then maybe a second question thereafter is, okay, they identify maybe the bottlenecks that they can see through the data, but what if the bottleneck is actually inside of them, their resourcefulness, their creativity? What if then?
Yeah. Those are great questions. I think that that's actually a really good conversation to have because most bottlenecks are in the entrepreneurial.
Right.
Yeah. But I have this thing that I call, it's called the acquisition funnel that I created. And it's composed of 4 stages. Stage number 1 is leads. Stage number 2 is appointments. Stage number 3 is shows. Stage number 4 is closes. Those 4 stages, and we're only talking acquisition, so this isn't considering fulfillment, but those 4 stages make up every single thing on the front end of the business that leads to a sale. It's very easy, and you want to work in order of the funnel. So if you don't have leads and you don't have lead generation, that's where you start. And then you start researching acquisition channels. You start looking what other people in your industry are doing, stuff like that, right? So first look at what your problem is. If you don't have leads, it's very easy. Start there. If you do have leads and you're generating leads in some way, shape, or form, or you're running cold emails, but you're getting no appointments, then we need to start working on that. And you need to only focus, because if you try to focus on everything at once, you end up doing nothing and you get overwhelmed. But if you focus on where the biggest bottleneck is, so appointments, for example, focus on all the subsidiaries around appointments. What makes up the appointments? Do I have a user-friendly booking process? How often am I following up? Am I sending any follow-up messages? Do I have team members that are having good conversations with people? Am I going to events? Is cold email even right for my business? What are other people doing? And stuff like that. And then same thing with shows. If people aren't showing up, do I have reminder notifications? Am I building enough credibility? Was the first conversation that I had with them, did I ask enough questions? Did I establish the connection well enough, etc.? And then you kind of work your way down the funnel, and you can very easily pinpoint your bottleneck, and you can fix the bottlenecks if you just focus on what that bottleneck is and only isolate that problem. And then once you fix it, move on to the next step.
Got it. So then at what point can you identify, just maybe me being like the devil's advocate here, at what point can you identify that you actually don't have the ability to identify your own bottlenecks? What if you actually you have a lot of the knowledge around client acquisition, the knowledge that's required to identify and then see where in that bottleneck could there be a solution or an additional KPI that needs to be adopted or adapted. So then how do you identify the bottleneck when you don't have that sort of knowledge?
That's a great question. 2 things here. There's seek help or there's a time horizon. I think at some point in time, every business owner is going to have to figure that out, whether they understand it as much as I do, breaking it down into a simple system. Usually I'm able to kind of get people to have an aha moment. Whenever I break that down, they're like, oh, wow, you're right. I just can't get people to show up to my calls. I need to work on that. But if they don't have that knowledge surrounding it, eventually they will just by doing the thing over and over again. Every business owner needs to know how to market and sell eventually. Whether or not they do it in the order that I just broke down is dependent upon the person. But I think eventually they figure it out. It's just a time horizon of being a business owner, because you can't grow a business if you don't consistently get more clients, and if you can't sell them.
True. One small caveat here: the business can grow if potentially you actually end up focusing on LTV instead of just customer acquisition, right? So you get a client, they maybe pay you like $5,000 up front, but then what happens if you can actually turn that into a $5,000 recurring every month, right?
Yeah.
Then every single new client isn't just a one-time payment; it becomes more of like a compounding, a stacking effect.
Yeah. I think I love that, because I talk about LTV all the time. And I think LTV is actually more important than the front end. But obviously in the beginning, especially as an early business owner, you have to know how to market and sell. And most people in the beginning aren't good enough to have a long LTV. So it's like, it's a loophole, because they need to be able to market and sell and then experience their first client, first 10 clients, 20 clients to mess up enough to actually start putting the pieces together of, okay, they complained about this. I need to fix that problem. What are the SOPs that I need to establish to fix these problems so everybody has a good experience up until this point? And then you kind of just make changes based on the feedback, and LTV begins to increase. And then you get to a certain point where I believe that is more important than everything else. Because like you said, if you can get a client to stay with you for a year, I mean, it doesn't matter if you're only signing up one person a month at that point. There's so much longevity in your business at that point.
Exactly. And then that, I think personally, that's when business actually starts.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So we're basically at time now. Just one last question. Is there anything that you'd want to say directly to the audience? Some words of wisdom, so to speak.
Question. What would you say is the average avatar of the audience here? Everybody's a business owner, pretty much.
Everybody's B2B SaaS, or if not, B2B investor.
B2B SaaS, B2B investor. Okay, that's great. Great way to transition into this. 100% focus on LTV. Here's one really cool thing. I'm not sure if you're familiar with, but you can apply this to anything. Jimmy John Leotard. Have you heard of Jimmy John's before? The sandwich shop? Okay. So sandwich shop, he sold it for about $2 billion. An operation that he was running and now has multiple locations. But he was on a podcast, and one of the things that he said, what kind of cracked the code for him, was he tried to franchise his locations after he had like 30 locations. He franchised all of them, and the problem was the reviews started going downhill, and his company was starting to fail because each franchise location was kind of doing their own thing, and nobody was following the SOPs that he put in place, because every franchise location had its own individual owner. So he bought the entire franchise back, and he looked at all of his 5-star reviews. There's like over 1,000 of them at the time. And he said all of the 5-star reviews, every single one without fail, either talked about how good the food was, how quickly they got the food, how clean the facility was, or how nice the people were. And he bought the franchises back. He said every single location is going to have SOPs built around those 4 things and those 4 things only. And we're going to try to make sure that every single person has a 5-star experience 100% of the time. So when you go into those facilities now, if you ever see a Jimmy John's, everybody's always super nice. The facility is always super clean. The consistency of the experience you have, the sandwich will almost taste exactly the same no matter where you are, if you're across the country. And the food is always good. And you always get it really fast, freaky fast. It's like their logo. But that was one of the things that we applied to our back-end project management, which is I watched that and it was like a bomb went off in my head. And we looked at all of the good reviews that we get from our customers, and we looked at some of the complaints, obviously, but we built all of our SOPs around the 5-star experience. How can we make sure that if somebody comes through and says, wow, like I got my whole system set up and I was getting more appointments like in less than 7 days, that's insane. What SOPs can we create to make sure that everybody else has that same experience, that they see the result within 7 days or less? And that completely changed the game for us in the LTV.
Amazing. Okay. Well, you heard him. Focus on LTV, focus on the key drivers of 5-star reviews, 5-star experiences, and build the business around those North Stars, so to speak. All right, Ashton. Well, it was a phenomenal conversation. Thank you for the time, and hopefully we'll have you back on the podcast again.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you for having me. This was awesome.